I talked last week about how each Sunday there are multiple texts. Some of the texts are from our Revised Common Lectionary. Some of the texts are from our hymnal. Some of the texts are from the world around us. There is a disturbing collision between one of the texts today and some news from the world around us. I don't know how many of you read the national papers or watch TV that includes international news, and whether you are aware of the tragedy in Kenya of the church where the so-called pastor, a misnomer because a pastor cares for his people, but the preacher persuaded a bunch of his followers to go with him out into an inhospitable and arid piece of land that he had acquired and persuaded them to starve themselves to death, to starve their children, telling them that this is how they would meet Jesus. And so when I read in a letter from Peter about how insofar as you are sharing Christ's sufferings, you should rejoice because that means you will share Christ's glory. It has sort of a nasty taste in my mouth because that was this preacher's message. Crucify yourselves as Jesus was crucified, that you may share in his risen glory. It's an extreme example, but unfortunately, it is not the only example of unscrupulous, deluded preachers using the words of Scripture to isolate people, to persuade them to do things that are manifestly harmful to themselves and to the people they love. There was also a review of a recent autobiography of someone who grew up Jehovah's Witness and was disfellowshipped when he was outed as gay as a young man. Disfellowshipping mean that his own parents no longer spoke to him. He was completely ostracized from the only family and community that he had known in his young life. An extreme example, yes. But there are churches in our own community that tell parents that they should shun their children if their children are gay, or if their children do other things that the church teaches are wrong. And it's part of what I call apocalyptic Christianity. The belief that there is something really horrible coming, that God is going to come in judgment, and that if you don't exactly toe the line, you are going to be cast into a burning pit forever. The adherents of this version of Christianity would have us believe that the alternative to this, the only alternative to this is complete hedonism. Complete lack of any kind of boundaries, any kind of moral authority. You know, I had a supervisor in the chaplain position who believed that the devil came into our minds if we played cards. You know, if you look for the devil everywhere, you find him. Is the only alternative complete atheism and hedonism? I suggest that there is a third way, and I call it wisdom Christianity. If we look at the Jesus who ate with prostitutes and tax collectors, who told his disciples, "Consider the lily of the fields, of how they toil not, and neither do they spin, and yet Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of these. And can you by anxious thought add 1 cubit to your height?" Consider the Psalms and how they teach us to trust in God and do good. Consider the quote from the prophet that hangs in our own chapel of, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice and love mercy and walk humbly in the way of your Lord?" This is not a fearful, apocalyptic way of following Jesus. This is a way of following Jesus that is compatible with continuing to live in such a way that if the Son of Man appears tomorrow, you will rejoice. But if the Son of Man does not appear during your lifetime, and you die of old age, preferably at a good old age, that you will look back on a life well lived. To love the people in your lives and put their well-being above the fear-mongering of some preacher. To love yourself and to believe that the God who gave Jesus for us, that Jesus who was incarnate for us, loves the person you are. Not that mythical, perfect person that if you watch yourself every single moment of the day in fear and trembling, you might somehow imitate. No, the person you are, with whatever personality and sexuality and strengths and weaknesses that is. And do the next good thing. The neighbor who is next to you, to care for them. This is not hedonism. It is not the philosophy of Ayn Rand of selfishness. It is the belief that the God who loves you also loves that neighbor. And that perhaps the way God is caring for that neighbor is to give you a little more than you actually need so you can help them. This is the Christianity, the wisdom Christianity. It's not unique to us followers of Jesus. You know, you can read some of the things the Dalai Lama has written. You can read some rabbis. God's wisdom is not an exclusive revelation to followers of Jesus, the exclusive revelation to us is that we can see God by looking at Jesus. That we have a human pattern, a human example of living life, loving God and loving our neighbor. We can read the scriptures, we can read the New Testament, and we will see different groups of Jesus followers living in different circumstances and trying different things. You read the passage from Acts today, and what these Jesus followers from Galilee thought was going to happen was that the Davidic kingdom of Israel would be restored, that Israel would gain its independence from Rome, that the descendants of King David would once again sit on the throne. They were asking Jesus, when is that going to happen? And he said, it is not for you to know the time or periods that the Father has set by his own authority. Don't set all your hopes on what you think God is going to do in the future, because you'll probably be wrong. And we don't know. What we know is the life we are given now, the people in your lives that you are given to love today, the God who invites us to worship him in spirit and in truth, and does not make that truth exclusive to any one small group of people. Think skeptically when people label themselves Christians. Ask yourself, what kind of Christian is this? Is this person someone who is modeling his or her life on Jesus? A life of love and of service? Or is this a person who is looking to get power by making me afraid?